All right, we'll start in a minute. Just copy down the focus question and copy down what's in red. You're going to just set up, you're going to need the effects of the Dust Bowl too in blue, but we're not going to do that just a second. All right. Liana and Jaden, you guys do not have to stay. I have you already down for attendance, but if you'd like to stay and just hang out, of course you can.
Wait, so the next lesson is about prohibition?
Correct. Yes, for you guys, yes.
So we just have to do the test today?
Yep, that's all it is for today.
All right, well, I'm glad you're back.
Thank you so much, Jaden.
I remember you said that you tried to name your baby Lincoln, I think.
I was told no. One, because it was a girl, and two, my wife was just not having it, so we didn't go with Lincoln.
Right. Well, have fun with that. See you.
Thanks. All right, bye. All right, 8C and 8B, just copy down the focus question, copy down what's in red.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes.
Why don't we write from the right side?
What do you mean?
Like we start writing on the right instead of the left.
In like American English culture? Like, what do you mean? I'm confused.
Like instead of starting from the left, you start from the right.
Well, our eyes in American English language, like I'm not American, like American culture and English language, you read from left to right. So you should start writing what's on the left first because that's what your eyes naturally would read, I guess. But I'm not a psychologist. I don't know really the answer to that question. That's just kind of what I think.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get started. So the Great Depression we have looked at from an economic perspective. We saw how bad it was from a money situation, all the people that lost their money. We saw the stock market crash. We knew the Great Depression was tough from that standpoint. But there's also a perfect storm where it's not only tough from a perspective of economic issues and money issues, there's also going to be a big environmental issue. So I know you guys are probably not done copying, but I would like to go back to this slide here. This is a map of the United States. There's an area of our country called the Great Plains. Okay, the Great Plains, if you can follow my mouse, is located in the center of our country. The Great Plains is an area very unlike New York, very unlike the cities, very unlike our area where you have some hills, you have city life, you have streets. The Great Plains really just consists of a lot of farmland and a lot of flat land. And in this particular area, you're going to have some very different types of weather that are going to occur. You'll have things like tornadoes. You'll have things like extreme drought. Then you'll have extreme thunderstorms. Whatever the weather is like in the Great Plains, it's very extreme, okay? So we're going to look at how this area, okay, led to something called the Dust Bowl. Okay, this area led to something called the Dust Bowl. Jadalyn, you have a question? I don't think I have you guys this period. Yeah, I think I see you guys tomorrow. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. So Now we know this is where this Dust Bowl is going to kind of start up. So before we go into the causes of the Dust Bowl, I want you to take a look at what the Dust Bowl looks like. Now, we have not had anything like this since the Great Depression. Okay, but as you'll notice here, look at what a Dust Bowl looks like. It looks like a very big cloud of dirt or a very big cloud of dust or I don't even know, smoke it kind of looks like, but it's not smoke. It's definitely like a brownish tint, okay, that develops throughout this time. So how in the world did we start to have these dust storms, okay? And what it's known as the Dust Bowl is there was so many dust storms that got kind of put together, and they would go through the entire United States, all right? So how did these dust storms start in the middle of the country? Well, now we're going to look at some causes so we get a better understanding of it. So people have been living out in the Great Plains for America for over like 50 to 60 years. And what they're doing there is they're doing a lot of farming in that area. When they do a lot of farming in that area, that's known as over farming, where people are basically, trying to grow crops in that area. And then what you do is after you grow the crops, you have to turn the soil. Okay, so the soil topples over, and then you have to farm again. Okay, plant new seeds. Let me ask you guys, write in the chat if you've ever been on a patch of grass for a long period of time. Does anyone know what happens to the grass if you're like on it for a long period of time? It doesn't stick up anymore. What does it do? What does the grass do? Correct. It just stays down. Okay, so when the grass is down, okay, and I play sports, I coach football, I play football. If you start staying in the same area, okay, what happens is the grass starts to get picked up off the ground, and then it goes into soil. So that's what a lot of farming is. You're taking grass and you're basically turning it into soil and using that soil to grow crops. When you do this for decades, for 50 years, you're basically taking the same fertile soil, okay? It basically just turns into dirt, okay? It doesn't become fertile anymore because you're overusing it, okay? If you were a farmer, this would make a lot of sense. If you've never farmed before, if you've never planted a seed, you maybe don't understand. But if you remember back in like elementary school, whenever you planted seeds, you wanted fertile soil, okay? You wanted it to be watered down. You wanted it to have sunlight. This way the crops would grow, the plants would grow. However, okay, when you are over farming and when you're overgrazing, those are when animals eat the grass, okay, or eat the vegetation. This becomes a major problem. So this is cause number one. Cause number two, the Great Plains has extremely crazy weather. It can be very, very windy, okay? Now, when it's very windy in New York City or the Bronx, you don't really feel it as much as you would out in flatlands or the Great Plains because there's a bunch of buildings kind of like blocking. Sorry. There's a bunch of buildings kind of blocking the wind, so it doesn't seem as crazy. Okay? But the high winds are going to be the second cause of the Dust Bowl. And the third thing is, if it doesn't, I mean, if you guys play baseball, or if you've ever seen a baseball game and you get bored and you're in the infield and you kick the dirt, if it's a rainy day, the dirt's not going to go anywhere. But if you're playing baseball and you're in the infield and you kick the dirt and it's a very hot day and it hasn't rained in a while and there's been a little bit of a drought, meaning that there hasn't been a lot of rain, what's the dirt going to do? It's actually going to come up in the air and look like dust. Okay, so if you're out sometime, okay, and you're playing baseball, or if you go to a baseball game and you see the infielders kicking the dirt and smoke comes out of the air, that dirt, that is because it's a little bit dry out there. So when you combine these two things, you get this. You get these massive dust storms. These massive dust storms that literally travel throughout the country. And they travel, just so you're aware, they would travel from the Great Plains and they'd make it all the way to the East Coast. The dust always flew east. I don't really know why. Okay, it probably has something to do with science that Mr. Gilardo can explain. But the dust always flew east. The wind was an eastward wind, I think. Okay, it was an easterly wind. All right. Here's another photo. Okay, this one's a little bit more of a bigger dust storm, but you see how high these go? Like these are massive dust storms. I mean, these are houses. This dust storm's towering over the houses. This is a real photograph. This is New York City. Could you imagine going to New York City and seeing these dust storms? I mean, it would be just crazy. So it wasn't only the Great Depression dealing with the lack of money, people literally had to fight these dust storms as well. And it's very depressing stuff being stuck in a dust storm. Now let's go over some effects. Okay, you guys can copy down what's in blue. It's the last part of the slide. So let me say this. If you were caught in a dust storm, it is scary. It is scary, but it's not like deadly. Like if you got caught in a dust storm, like you wouldn't die on the spot. However, when you are caught in a dust storm, you are not really breathing in that much oxygen. You're breathing in a lot of dust particles. And a lot of dust particles, for those that don't know, are things that could lead to asthma or lead to some respiratory illnesses. And people, of course, could die from those respiratory illness. You'll learn something called dust pneumonia. Okay, you'll learn about in the video. That's a good respiratory illness that got a lot of people sick and killed some people. So these dust storms were so bad in the Great Plains that people had to leave their homes to find work. Okay, and that's when they do that, they're known as migrant workers. Now, this is a little bit of a problem. Okay, when those migrant workers left the Great Plains because they're stuck in these dust storms, okay, and it's not just that, like the dust storms, like when it overtakes a house, right, your house is not going to be ruined, but it's going to be extremely dirty. Okay, it's going to be a big problem. But think about it. Were there, I'm going to ask you in the chat, were there a lot of jobs available during the Great Depression, yes or no? Were people easily able to get jobs? Correct. There are not a lot of jobs, guys. So when you have people moving from one place and going to an area where they're going to also look for a job against people who are already unemployed, that's going to lead to people not liking them very much. So migrant workers were generally not treated very well, and a lot of them moved westward away from the dust storms to places like California, to Arizona, okay, places out here. Here's California, here's Arizona. They went to Nevada, they went to Oregon, where the dust storms really didn't go to. And when they went there, they were usually trying to compete for jobs against people who didn't have jobs. And that really hurt them. All right, does that happen now? Sometimes. Now, this is a good example, good comparison with the pandemic. When at the height of the pandemic, people were competing for the same jobs. So if you and someone else were competing for the same job, you had less of a chance to get it. But generally, our economy, take away the pandemic, does pretty well. So we don't really mind having a lot of people move to different areas to get jobs. But back then, when the unemployment rate, meaning was like 20%, meaning like one-fifth of the whole population didn't have a job, many people didn't like the migrant workers. Okay? So with that being said, let's go to today's assignment. I think you guys will have plenty of time to finish this before the period ends. All right. You have a reading on the Dust Bowl. Yeah, let me quickly read it to you, and then we'll go through the questions. All right, so let's read through this together, and then you're going to have an opportunity to go through the questions. You're going to notice there are 6 short answer questions. There are 4 multiple choice, and then there's a timeline you're going to have to fill out. You'll see how to do this in a little bit. All right. So farmers in the Midwestern United States suffered from the downfall of the United States economy during the Great Depression. We talked about this. The Great Plains were deeply affected. This area endured long seasons of droughts, which is basically times of no water or rain. They led to huge formations of dust storms. The dust storms blew across the region. The Great Plains became known as the Dust Bowl, the area where all of this dust and these storms kind of developed. The Dust Bowl drought started in 1931. The droughts caused severe soil erosion as the ground's root system became weaker. This caused the soil particles on the ground surface to become loose. Winds formed large dust clouds of dust and picked up the soil particles. The clouds swept across the region. It caused dust storms that were often referred to as black blizzards, okay, because of the color of, how these storms looked. Okay, a blizzard is when there's a big, big snowstorm, okay, and those are known as, white blizzards. The dust covered everything such as people's homes, roads, farm equipment, and even farm cattle, like the cows, okay, the chickens, okay, they were all covered in dust as well. In 1932, 14 dust storms were reported. They increased to 38 dust storms in 1933. The reoccurring dust storms caused farmers and families to pack up everything and move. Most moved to California. In May of 1934, it was reported that one particular dust storm carried 350 million tons of dirt, 2,000 miles east to New York. Okay, think of all that dirt, tons of dirt. The damage from the dust storm killed farm animals, destroyed more farmlands, and forced more families to relocate. Since the Great Depression still affected Americans during this time period, jobs were not readily available for the people moving out of the Dust Bowl region. Families struggled for food and money. With farmlands being destroyed, agricultural production took a huge drop. Farmers had no way to keep up with the demands needed to support America or even their own families. In 1935, through President Roosevelt's New Deal, the Soil Conservation Service was formed. This is like a New Deal program you haven't learned about yet, a smaller one. Farmers were helped in the replanting of trees and grasses to help prevent soil erosion and reestablish the farmlands. Rainfall started to occur more often in the area. Although immediate change didn't occur, the soil erosion dilemma didn't decrease. The Dust Bowl region was rebuilt by 1941. So we don't really have dust storms that happen anymore, okay, because the weather has been more cooperative and the government's kind of helped out a little bit more. But they used to be a huge problem throughout the Great Depression, as you can tell. All right. Now, you're going to do these questions. Okay, you have plenty of time to do it. All right. You're going to answer them here on these answer key. All right. I've already kind of set them up. You have the 6 short answer, the 4 multiple choice, and anytime you see a date from the reading, you're going to fill in what happened during that time frame. All right. I'll be here taking attendance. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, guys? Get this done. I think you should get it done in 20 minutes. I don't think you should have much of a problem if you work hard.